In this video, I want to talk to you about some of the vocabulary from the Tiwa language that Joseph Rael, Beautiful Painted Arrow, uses frequently in his books and in his teachings. We talked previously about how the mystical view is one that views everything as vibration. And connected to this is a realization that the core way that we encounter or interact with vibrations around us and within us is through the breath. So, Tiwa being a mystical tradition, it's no coincidence that the word for the divine being in Tiwa is Wa Ma Chi. And Wa Ma Chi means breath, matter, and movement. And that's the Tiwa name for the divine being. So we can already see three concepts that are brought to us, three ideas, three vibrations that are brought forward to us as a hint that if we want to experience and understand the divine being, we should pay attention to breath, to matter, and to movement. There's a lot to be said in yogic, mystical, Sufic traditions about breath work. Certainly if you don't have a practice where you breathe consciously and even send the breath to different parts of your body, then that's something to explore, something I can highly recommend. And then breath itself, there's always this concept or inference that Spirit had a kind of desire or had a kind of intention, and that's in fact how we get to the act of creation. So not only is Spirit there, but Spirit causes things to vibrate. And from quantum mechanics, quantum physics, we now understand that matter is ceaselessly vibrating. And in fact, without this concept of vibration, you can call it the dance of Shiva, the inhalation and exhalation of Brahma, all of these concepts, without this vibration or the sound behind everything, matter could not exist. There has to be some kind of polarity in order for there to be some apparent distinction between the unified great being in order to get things like colors, snails, trees, birds, galaxies. So matter is the basic vibration that puts a visible container around our movements, around our perceptions. And then after breath and matter, it's very important to have movement. Because although we can realize things intellectually in our mind, really how things become real to us in an actualized sense is through movement. And this is part of the reason that dancing is so important to folk and native Aboriginal traditions. Archaeologists, or let's call them colonizing peoples, conquistadors, whatever, when they encountered the native peoples, they just thought these people were just, having a party or just, dancing crazily, having no idea really about what the function of that dance was and how the energies of the planet, of the local biosphere were being interacted with through the dance, and how people's psyches, their intuitions then interacted because they were dancing. They were actually open to even more inspirations. So breath, matter, and movement, when we put these things all together, we see these as core interests or core activities of the divine being. And they imply for the human that those are key matters that we should also be involved in. We should be involved in breath, the understanding of vibration or matter, and in movement. So that's the first Tiwa word, Wa Ma Chi. Now, I said earlier that the great being has an intention or a desire to experience itself. And you have this same resonance in many cultures, many traditions. In one tradition it says, I was a treasure and desired to be known. So in Tiwa, the implication is that the start of this creation, or the beginning of manifestation, was through a process or a sound or a chant called po-che. And po-che literally means blowing eyes that see. So we have an implication of a process that Wama-chi, the great being, starts. And even in many scriptures you have words like the eyes of the Lord are running to and fro, and the principles of omniscience and all of that. So there is this concept that breath, the blowing, and the seeing, the ability for vibration to be connected with every other vibration instantaneously, regardless of wherever it is, for the great being to see, to be aware of itself, that is the movement of breath. The breath, the matter, and the movement are expressed in this concept of creation, in this po-che. So that's the second word, po-che. Then, when you look at Joseph's teachings, he really looks at, and Tiwa is very concerned with, how everything that the human body does expresses a metaphor. Whether we're sitting, walking, standing, eating, laying down, sleeping, jumping, crawling, all of these things are metaphors for divine principles. And part of the reason this is so is that the human being is an assemblage or a bringing together of many divine principles into a being, into us being a two-legged, having eyes that see, ears that hear, the mouth, all of those things, the digestive system, all of those are metaphors for cosmic divine processes. And the earth has them too. The earth has those kind of functioning areas or organs, the trees being the lungs, and so on. So, when the manifestation is produced through the po-che, one of the great bringing togethers of all the divine concepts in the expression of the human is by walking. And Joseph says whenever we have something that we're considering or trying to work out, of course he's going to say use movement, but he says walking, and I believe walking is one of the best exercises there is. By walking, which the Tiwa word is ta-chi-hu, in this ta-chi-hu, the implication or the expression of this is that the ta is a generation or a moving forward of the divine being. It's a statement about beingness, the ta. And the chi, ki, is a very interesting word across many traditions in Asia and in the Americas, many cultures. Chi is energy, is vibration. So you have this being of vibration. And when we're in ta-chi-hu, we connect with the divine being. And that's what hu is. It's said that of all the divine names, hu is the only one that the human being can pronounce. All the rest are just approximations. But hu is one of the names of the divine being that we can pronounce. So in ta-chi-hu, we reconnect with our divinity. And further in Joseph's teachings, when Joseph talks about walking, he really emphasizes that being the two-leggeds and being so much aware of through our bodies of the left side and the right side, that part of the job of the human being is to balance polarities. We are here on this planet to take, and I'm not calling them dualities, because I don't believe, I believe duality is an artificial separation of two things that have apparently no relationship to one another. But when we talk about dualities, and we can soften it and look at polarities, when we go to polarities, there's room for relationship. There's room for throwing away this idea of absolutes, and instead of looking at fixed points, look at points that are relative to each other, even relative to a state. There are different states of lightness or darkness, different states of hot or cold. In the wintertime, if it gets to be 60 outside, that could be pretty warm, but in the summer that feels pretty cold. So, ta chi hu, which Joseph also says is the sound that pant legs make when they're walking. Ta chi hu is our opportunity to express the divine being by walking our divineness on the planet and balancing the polarities. If you read Joseph's stuff, his writings, he talks about walking to Chimayo. And there's so many metaphors there about what that process is all about. Another word is bachu. Bachu. And if you were paying attention, this hu that we talked about, ta chi hu, and then bachu, this u sound is there again. And bachu is beauty. The Tiwa word for beauty. And the ba is another kind of emissive sound. It implies a soul-like quality. And if you have studied some of Egyptian mysticism, you'll know about the different bodies, the ba and the ka. So here again, a very strong similarity between a mystical language, Tiwa, and another mystical language. That the bachu is the vehicle that is seeing itself as it is, seeing the world as it is, and seeing the beauty and the uniqueness of every expression, of every tree, every flower, every human being. And bachu kind of completes a cycle of these four words we've talked about. Wama-chi, the great being. Po-che, the desire, the intention to have an expression. Ta-chi-hu, to work it out, to move it, to realize it more and more, to balance the polarities. And then in Ba-chu we come to beauty, and if you look at the writings of Hazrat Inayat Khan, you would see, I believe it's in an Eastern Rose Garden, in the beginning of this book, he explains how the desire to experience beauty is one of the core motivations of the divine being to do anything. That, yes, at the core of the divine being is love. There's also harmony. There's also great beauty. And it's love, harmony, and beauty that are the great motivators behind so many of the mystical traditions, and certainly behind Joseph's work. So those four words are part of the core transmission or core teaching for you to be aware of when you look at Joseph's writings and any of his teachings. One of the things you can do with these words is, if you're familiar with doing mantras or different sound practices, I would encourage you to do chanting with these words. If you want to understand and experience the divine being in yourself, you could chant Wama-chi, 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 Wama-chi. Do the same thing with those other phrases, and try it for a number of repetitions, and then just sit for a few minutes afterwards and let that vibration that you have created, that you've participated in, that you've summoned, let it sit in your atmosphere and see how you feel different. And this is a great key or a great secret behind many of the mystical traditions, is that there are sacred phrases, and these sacred phrases, when chanted or sung, they evoke primal mystical qualities, core divine archetypes of being. And when you do that, they will have an effect on your being. They change you. And at that point, then you are echoing the archetype of Wama-chi in the function of Po-che, balancing the polarities in your body, in your psyche, in your energy field. And the product always, when the divine enters, is beauty. So I encourage you to look into a mystical path, to read Joseph's writings, and to see, put them into practice, use movement. You can chant or sing, make up your own songs, walk while you're chanting or singing, make up your own melodies and try it out. It will have an effect, because we're talking now about sacred sound technology. We're talking about things that work, that have worked for mystical traditions for thousands of years. Aho.